عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد, continuing the talk with regards to matters of Aqeedah, matters of belief, and we were talking about التوسل, or seeking closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a permissible way, in what is mashru' and what has been narrated, whether it's in the Quran or in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because for anyone to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they cannot attain that unless they follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered. And this is, as we heard before, this is the meaning of the first pillar of Islam. La ilaha illallah, al-ma'bud, the one to be worshipped is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. وَلَا يُعْبَدُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ إِلَّا بِمَا شَرَعَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not to be worshipped except with what He had ordered us to do, and that is through Muhammadur Rasulullah, through the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And as we heard before also, this is the foundation of the deen. So this is something that every single Muslim have to have this in his heart. The only one to be worshipped is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only one to be followed is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How to go about by doing so? Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, this is something that is very obvious for every Muslim to do. Any ibadah, any order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we get to learn has to be done only for the sake of Allah. How to go about following the Prophet ﷺ alone? Either the person is a alim, and mashallah the method then is easy, or he would ask the people of knowledge. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. And when a person would ask the person of knowledge, in his heart this foundation is never changed whatsoever. That to the best of his ability, and to the best of all the effort and the means that he took, what this alim told him, this is what he would meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. That's why you have to trust this alim. This alim has to be trustworthy, because he is the thing between that person and the Prophet ﷺ. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. Al-ulama are the inheritors of the prophets. This is what the hadith means. So the ulama, they inherited this deen from the Prophet ﷺ, and they convey it to others. The people, if the Prophet ﷺ was alive among them, if they have an issue, they go to the Prophet ﷺ, as the Sahaba radiallahu anhum did. And they would ask the Prophet ﷺ, and he would give them the verdict immediately. Or if the wahy did not come down yet, the Prophet ﷺ would wait and the wahy will come, because he does not speak from his desire ﷺ, he speaks from revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But once the Prophet ﷺ would say it, and they receive that, the matter is over, it's finished. There is no other thoughts, or maybe this or maybe that. Once they understood what the Prophet ﷺ said, the matter is over. So this is also the goal of the Muslim till the Day of Judgment. Even if a person is not sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, asking him, and he's responding to from the Prophet ﷺ, but the same what's in the heart of the Sahabi when he asks the Prophet ﷺ should be exactly the same in the heart of every Muslim from the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ till the Day of Judgment. That he has in his heart that once I know what the Prophet ﷺ meant, then I would do it, submit myself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why we would see that at times of fitan is not the killing and the tribulations and so on. The fitan is the lack of the ulama. The real fitna is when there is no true ulama or ulama in abundance, in which a person, he wants to know the way the Prophet ﷺ. How would a Muslim know that? There's a very big misunderstanding to the deen, because we're born and raised as Muslims, so we think that we already know the deen of Islam by default. This big problem is that we think we know the way of the Prophet ﷺ. But then when we think, how did we know the way of the Prophet ﷺ? Is it because we were told in school, or we saw our parents doing something, or we heard it in television, or maybe the internet? Things like this. When you think about it more deeply, mashallah, many of it might be very good resources. But when you think about it deeply, this is how we take the deen. This is how we belittle the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we take it like we take a news from a newspaper. This is deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the purpose of our life. The heavens and the earth are created for us to establish the deen. So it's not to make it difficult for ourselves, but the concern has to be there in the heart. That the person wants to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from him. And this is, at times of fitan, this is the fitna because of this. The person will not be able to know, this is the right way, or this is the right way. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me, or not. So once the concern is there, and he turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, and he's guided to be among those who ask the people of knowledge, this is the real gift and the real ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for someone. So we have to have this proper understanding of things, and that's why, as Imam al-Sha'bi rahimahullah, he said, إِنَّمَا هَلَكْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ بِتَرْكِكُمُ الْأَثَرِ. He said, you destroyed yourself when you turned away from al-athar, from the text, from the wahy, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is destruction. If the ummah turns away from the wahy, and turns away from the wahy to what? To their own intellectual abilities, and what they think. And they would have a flavor of the deen and what they're thinking. They're not just thinking and that's it. No, they're thinking, and they're thinking that this is part of the deen because they love the deen. And they want the deen to be victorious, and they want to be righteous, but with their own thinking, because they think that their fitrah is pure and they're good and they're Muslims, so definitely they are thinking the right way. Without knowledge, it doesn't work this way. So a person can be in deep deviation when he doesn't feel it, doesn't know it. So the criteria to know, especially at times of confusion, is al-athar, is the tradition, is the text. And the text, we should not belittle it that we just go to the text and get the information. No, we need to have the knowledge, we have to humble ourselves, and that's why asking the people of knowledge to the best of our ability. And if a person in doubt, should I do it or not, then we don't do it till it's become clear that this is the way of the Prophet. This is what Shaykh rahimahullah, he said in this subject, and I don't want to repeat the whole thing over again, with regards to seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to have wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tell us that this is permissible, this is not permissible. Not that it feels good and it works and it's great and I saw this dream, and it doesn't work this way. It has to be Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And what's in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the way that the Sahaba practiced and everything, is that they would seek the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the righteous good deeds that they do, their dua using the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, using their good deeds that they did for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They would go and ask the Prophet ﷺ to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. And that's it. There's no such a thing as going to someone that is dead to ask him. Never you would find an evidence like this. There's no such a thing that they even went to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ asking him alayhi salatu wasalam. There is no way. And anything of that nature, it is fabricated. No way that there is even one sound hadith that says a sahabi from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, or even a tabi'i, that he would go to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and start talking to the Prophet ﷺ, as if he is sitting in front of him, living in the masjid. He would talk to him, O Prophet of Allah, you see the situation of the ummah, it's very sad, what to do, please ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just asking him, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us, to make it easy for us. There's no such a thing whatsoever, and they're the best people that understood the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And always comes the issue of the Prophet ﷺ, is he alive or not? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتُونَ. You will die and they will die. So, but the Prophet ﷺ is living a most perfect life than the life that we live in now. Right? But it's not the same concept of this life where people can go to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and they start a conversation with the Prophet ﷺ and waiting for a response and all of these types of things. The deen has been completed by the mercy of Allah. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. The ayah that came down at the day of the Eid, as the Jewish man, when he asked Umar radiallahu anhu, there's an ayah in your book, if it came down on us, or the Jews, we would make this day a Eid. And he said this ayah, on that day I completed your religion and perfected my favor upon you. I'm pleased for you to have the Islam as the deen. And he said, yes, I remember this day when the ayah was revealed, it was the day of Eid, the day of Arafah, when the Prophet ﷺ was in Hajj. So this ayah clearly states that the deen is completed. So once you open the door for others to add things into the deen of Islam. Where are the limits? There's no limits. Then it becomes more and more deviation. So he said, رحمه الله, والمقصود هنا أنه ليس في هذا الباب حديث واحد مرفوع إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعتمد عليه في مسألة شرعية باتفاق أهل المعرفة بحديث. He said there is no, in this subject of التوسل by other than what we mentioned, there's not even one hadith marfu' that is related to the Prophet ﷺ that people can depend on it in any matter of مسألة شرعية, matters of the deen, باتفاق, with the consensus or the agreement of all the people of knowledge of the hadith. And anything that has been narrated, then it is definitely من الموضوعات إما تعمدا من واضعه وإما غلطا منه. Either the one that fabricated the hadith, he did it intentionally, or he was mistaken. And the many different weak narrations and fabrications that people depend on, and even these narrations, it's an incident that can mean more than one thing, and something like that, very important in matters of the deen. We cannot depend on things that can be explained in more than one way. This has to be ayat muhkamat, has to be clear ayat in the Quran, clear hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Cannot be something that mean more than one thing. Otherwise, then the message is not completed yet. And this is the case with when anyone would do something that the Prophet ﷺ did, as if they're saying with their actions, not with their speech, that the deen is not completed. And the Prophet ﷺ did not convey the message in the most perfect way, so they are in need of this to increase the iman of the people and so on. And then he says, فَلَوْ كَانَ تَوَسُّلُهُمْ بِالنَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم بعد مماته كتوسلهم في حياته لقالوا كيف نتوسل بمثل العباس ويزيد بن الأسود ونحوهما ونعدل عن التوسل بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. You know, they used to do tawassul by the Prophet ﷺ during his life. What this type of tawassul is, they will go to the Prophet ﷺ and they ask him for dua, because the dua of the Prophet ﷺ is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the man that came and asked for rain and so on. After the Prophet ﷺ, there is not even one narration that they would ask the Prophet ﷺ the same way that they would ask him when he was alive ﷺ. But instead they would ask Al-Abbas radiallahu anhum, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Yazid ibn Aswad and so on, asking them to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's the dua of the righteous man, although the Prophet ﷺ was few steps away from them. So this is how they understood matters of the deen and so on. One important point is when the issue of al-iqsam ala Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, when a person would swear, we talked about that, ala Allah, swearing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is for those who are righteous. But then there's a specific situation here when people would make iqsam ala Allah azza wa jal bishay'in min al-makhluqat. They would ask, they would say, how would that be in English? In Arabic, a person would say, aqsamtu alayka ya rabbi kada, which means what? Like when you're standing in front of a human being, say, by Allah, you will do this for me. Right? A person will do that in his dua. Right? Of course, with the etiquettes and the manners, and this is some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they used to do that. And the Prophet ﷺ said that in the hadith, that from the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, مَنْ لَوْ أَقْسَمَ عَلَى اللَّهِ لَأَبَرَّ. From the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those if they swear on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would fulfill their oath. Right? Because of how righteous they are. Which is, of course, permissible, but not, for just the matter to be like this. Of course, for those who are righteous and so on. But then what is another point of this is if a person swear on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his prophet, for example, or by his any of his creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, فلا يقدر أحد أن ينقل فيه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يحتج به أهل العلم كما تقدم. There is no evidence whatsoever that any text, any wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that approve this. Right? That to swear on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by any of the creation of Allah, to make it as general as it can be, there is no evidence in this whatsoever. And as we know that al-qasam, or to take an oath, is something that has to be done only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not permissible with anyone, even if it's the Prophet ﷺ. So if a person swears by the Prophet ﷺ, that's shirk. As the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man halafa bi ghayri Allahi faqad kafara wa ashrak." Whoever swears by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had committed an act of kufr or an act of shirk. It doesn't take the person outside the fold of Islam just by doing that, but it's a minor shirk, unless a person believes in what he swears by as being like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is not permissible whatsoever. It has to be only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And but the issue of to ask or to swear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the creation, and swearing by other than Allah, right? Swearing by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is something that has to be clear, that is not permissible. So this is a very important point also that we have to understand. When it comes to these types of relationship between the slaves of Allah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the intermediaries between them, the things between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if a person sincerely read the Quran from the beginning to the end without too much distractions, right? Like if you stay home and read the Quran from the beginning to the end without meeting anyone, just for the sake of the argument, what is the message that you will get from the Quran? Tawheed in the pure sense, in the purest way whatsoever, right? The Quran is all about the oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this supposed to be our life, is the way of the Quran, the manifestation of the Quran, our life. So we have to walk and speak and do things what the Quran is. So sometimes you would find the rulings of things, people are far away of what the Quran is conveying. And the Quran is all about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and eliminating all of these things that the disbelievers and so on, that they put between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And every time the ayat talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is nothing in between the slaves of Allah and the creator of the heavens and earth. So then Shaitan, he worked on some of this ummah, in which they would put things between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they think that they're not good enough to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. So they have to go through someone else, even if a person is alive. And this is, as we said, even if it's permissible to ask someone to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you, but that's not the most perfect way of doing things, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say in the Quran that if you want to make dua, ask my righteous slaves to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you. There's no such a thing. When it said it's permissible, because some they used to do that, but this is not the norm, right? This is exception. And even when the Bedouin would come to the Prophet ﷺ, Bedouins, as it's well known, they're not from those who would learn from the Prophet ﷺ. So sometimes they would come with things that are strange. But again, it's absolutely permissible, no problem in it whatsoever. But it does not become the way of life. That some people, every time they have a need, they have to go look for the Imam of the Masjid, or the righteous man, or the scholar, or whatever. Please make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for me. Or someone died, they have to, before they even make their dua themselves, right? They look for someone righteous to ask them to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not how things are supposed to be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَى. Who will respond to the call of al-muttar if he calls him? Al-muttar is the one that is in dire need. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts his dua. So who will know more your need than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When a person asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understand what he means. If you stutter when you're making dua, right, and you're not able to say it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the heart. Although we have to make dua, of course, right? But when a person, when you're explaining something to someone, and you make mistakes in your words, you're so concerned, what if you misunderstand me? I have to repeat it again, this and that. But when a person is making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at any time, you go to that righteous man that you want to ask him to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you, you want to call him, or maybe he's sleeping now, I might disturb him. Or if I go to him, he's not in a good mood. But if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the morning, in the evening, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 in the morning, it doesn't matter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, حَيٌّ لَا يَمُوتُ قَيُّومٌ لَا يَنَامُ. He's the ever living subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the one that never sleeps subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ayatul Kursi, we recite it all the time. So at any time, you don't have to make any means of measures for a person to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anytime a person will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that whoever asks Him, He will respond to him. عليه سبحانه وتعالى وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجيب دعوة الداعي إذا دعاني. If my slaves ask you about me, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm close to them. Did not even say qul, did not say even say O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even this qul, as we talked about it before, as the ulama, they mention it as a precise looking into the wordings of the Quran. Everything or many things in the Quran, when they ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam something, the word qul comes in between. Say O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the answer comes. But when they asked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there was no qul here. Because even that qaf lam should not be between the slave of Allah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in dua. So there's no even qul. إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Indeed, I'm close to them. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Ujib meaning istijaba, meaning responding to the dua of the person if he makes dua to me. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And the ayat are so many. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْأَلْ اللَّهَ يَغْضَبِ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ عَلَيْهِ. Whoever does not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with him. So when we talk about tawassul and so on, sometimes, I don't even know how to use the word, but sometimes we find ourselves being too silly, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most high, is at all times, if people make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times, 24 hours a day, it will not even be enough to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why waste our time into having the hearts attached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And of course the best way is the way of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So, and the same thing with everything else. The matters of the graves, and as we said that before, shaitan has his ways in anyone that you've never seen before. He will put in your heart so much exaltation to that thing, or to that person, especially if he's a righteous person. If someone that you saw in your life, you see that he's deficient, just by the fact that you see, even if it's the most righteous man. When you look at him, he's a human being, skin. He's breathing the air, right? He's in need of the air, he's eating like a humble person. So you don't have in your heart this shirk necessarily. But when people they're born and raised, and they always hear about some righteous person that lived in the past, they've never seen him. Shaitan has his own ways of making the matter sound so perfect, that this person is sinless and so on. And then, step by step, he might get them to having the hearts attached to him and so on. So that's why you would find the rules of the deen of Islam in burial and so on, how the Prophet ﷺ ordered Ali radiallahu anhu that anytime he see a picture, إِلَّا طَمَسْتُهَا وَلَا قَبْرًا مُشْرِفًا إِلَّا سَوَيْتُهُ. That the Prophet ﷺ, my friend, the Prophet ﷺ, awsani, ordered me that any picture that I see, that I wipe it. And the picture, as the Prophet ﷺ said, al-ras, al-surah al-ras. The surah is the head, right, to wipe it. And any grave that is higher from the ground is to make it, level it with the ground. And these are the best generation ever brought to mankind. They didn't say that now, alhamdulillah, we're away from shirk, we're clean people, we're the best generation. It's okay, people would realize this. They took the matter very serious. And that's why you would find most of in the Muslim world, what happens to the graveyard? It's palaces. Second floors and trees and domes and all kinds of things there, right? Which is all clearly against the way the Prophet ﷺ, and not just this, one of the destructive outcome of disobeying the Prophet ﷺ, that the matter doesn't stop as a sin. No, it takes the people step after another to the worst thing ever, which is the shirk and associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's very clear in these places, you will definitely find those who make tawaf around these graves and do all kinds of things of matters of shirk, and they believe in these things. Why? Because of just one disobedience of one of the orders of the Prophet ﷺ that maybe earlier generations did, thinking the matter is easy, inshallah. People, alhamdulillah, they say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Belittling one of the orders of the Prophet ﷺ that leads people to this. So that's why when we say we follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, we have to take it serious, because what we do now, we might not be aware of what's going to happen 2, 3, 4 generations after us. Right? And we don't have this ability to see what's the outcome, but we have the ability to know that this is permissible, this is not permissible. That's enough for us. If this is something that is against the way of the Prophet ﷺ, then who are we to say, but in our situation, maybe this or maybe that? No, the matter should be very clear. Otherwise, a person can then put on his shoulder the sins of those who would come, few generations afterwards. If the matter is left without making sure that the truth and the proper knowledge is being spread, which is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ.